Good morning, everybody, and welcome. Before we begin, I just wanted to make an announcement that we will, if we could silence your phones, because at 11:30 there's a testing of the emergency broadcast system or something like that. And if you could just silence your phones so that during somebody's sharing of their particular offering, we don't have all of our phones going off alerting us to some whatever the alert is. It's a test. It's not an emergency, so no need to respond. Anyway, thank you. And we will begin momentarily with some calls to prayer.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله
500 years ago, the pilgrim Ignatius of Loyola found himself welcomed as a stranger on a journey of faith. Having experienced the adversity of injury, he sought the hospitality of others in new cities and countries. As an academic community, St. Joseph's University celebrates this Ignatian year, considering the ways that we extend the tradition of encountering each other as strangers and finding the grace and means to become neighbors. So welcome to SJU Praise, Interfaith Blessings on the New Year. Our theme this year is Welcoming the Neighbor, celebrating the power of God's closeness, compassion, and tenderness in this Ignatian year. Borders in every hemisphere are lined with those fleeing oppression and violence who seek asylum in the home of neighbors. Young people seek opportunity as they reach out for education and good neighborhood schools that will prepare them for life and dignified work that pays a just wage. People living on the margins of acceptance seek to have their voices and identities included so as to live as neighbors with all. In the midst of a worldwide pandemic, we find ourselves on pilgrimage together as a global community, seeking a solidarity that realizes our interdependence with all of creation, a web of life that makes us neighbors in sharing and respecting the gift of life in all forms. In 2008, the late prophetic Archbishop Desmond Tutu of South Africa visited our St. Joseph's community and told us, "People can tell you here in Philadelphia that your problems, seemingly intractable, can be solved. And why? They can be solved ultimately because this is the moral universe. This is God's world, and God is in charge. Sometimes you wish you could say, 'God, we know that you are in charge, but why don't you make it slightly more obvious?' But goodness will ultimately prevail because God is God, and this is a moral universe. We are fundamentally good, and we can't give up on anyone. We are made for goodness." So, in that spirit of not giving up on anyone and creating relationships as neighbors generating God's goodness in the world, let us now call upon God in many ways from each of our spiritual and religious traditions, seeking the goodness and compassion granted by God's closeness to make us neighbors to one another and all. In that spirit, then let us join together with our choir in singing, "O God of Countless Names."
Please be seated.
Now let us listen and reflect with members of our community as we hear blessings and wisdom from the traditions of Buddhism, Hinduism, Judaism, and Islam.
夜雨洗山岩，朝来翠读诗。夫作学观空， 清风满香积。正因自本无，而我好汉末。心急等死灰，未了人间孽。窗烛皆虚心，庭松多尽节。题此常青树，原不在虚实。何况终于间，凡理更无得。坐酒闻妙香，词行如可接。The night rain washes down the mountain cliffs. When dawn comes, the brilliant greens are done. Sitting cross-legged, I learn to contemplate emptiness. As the poor breeze fills with accumulating fragrances, words cannot in the end overcome delusion, but still, I remain fond of brush and ink. My mind has yet to become still as dead ashes. I am not yet exhausted on my worldly karma. The bamboo by the window is completely hollow of a shelf. The pen in the courtyard is extremely determined and poor. I intuitively understand that these evergreen trees are in essence beyond both emptiness and form. How could it be then that between bell and fish drum is where the principle of Buddhism are to be found? After long sitting, I take in wondrous fragrances, on shape of compassion, when we join with the ultimate essence of things.
Om Burbuswa, Tasvituriniam, Bargovadevisia, Dimahi, Diona, Pachadeta. May my intellect be steady without agitation. May it be clear without anger or passion. May the brilliant light of the sun beam through my intellect, so that the perception of the world may be clear. My discrimination subtle, my judgment correct and quick, and my comprehension of persons and situations precise and wise. Thank you.
From the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 10, verses 17 to 19. Ki Adonai Elohechem, hu Elohei ha'Elohim va'Adonai ha'Adonim, ha'el ha'gadol ha'gibor v'hanora, asher lo yisafanim, v'lo yikach shochad. Ose mishpat yatom v'almana ve'ohev ger, latet lo lechem v'simla, va'ahavtem et hager, ki gerim heyitem be'eretz Mitzrayim.
For the Lord your God is God supreme and Lord supreme, the great, the mighty, and the awesome God, who shows no favor and takes no bribe, but upholds the cause of the fatherless and the widow, and befriends the stranger, providing him with food and clothing. You too must befriend the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أرأيت الذي يكذب بالدين فذلك الذي يدعو اليتيم ولا يحض على طعام المسكين فويل للمصلين الذين هم عن صلاتهم ساهون الذين هم يراءون ويمنعون الماعون صدق الله العظيم.
In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, have you considered the person who denies the judgment? Behold, it is this kind of man that thrusts the orphan away and does not urge the feeding of the needy. Woe then unto those who pray, who are unmindful in their prayer, those who make show and forbid small kindness.
Thank you, Tuning, Raj, Jordan, Dr. Daluthi, Mehalia, and Dr. Iz Ilyugu. We thank you for sharing from your reflections, from your own traditions, allowing us to let those words, those expressions sit with us. I'd like to just offer a few words as a reflective moment. We decided this year that our speaker would come to us maybe from beyond, in a way, because it was on the first day of this particular year that occasioned the funeral of Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and that caused me to resurrect the address that he gave to our campus in 2008 when he visited us. I was surprised to be reminded how much he went out of his way to mention our own issues here in our city. He referred to the violence, racism, and poverty that our city was plagued with, and unfortunately his words are relevant today as they were 13 and a half years ago. We just completed a year when gun violence has taken a record number of lives in our city, many of them the lives of young people. A year where crime and poverty have arisen and the wealth gap widened. We have had a year marked by a decay in civic community and a weakening of civil society, and we find that maybe even our democratic institutions are in danger. It all begs the question, unfortunately, of how are we as neighbors and neighborhoods? But the late, great Archbishop Tutu, who in so many ways, with his life and actions, taught our world how to be a global neighborhood, and his address here on Hawk Hill gave us practical examples of local, regional, and national action that has and can again break down the barriers of bias, greed, and hopelessness by reminding us of who we are and how God made us to be with one another. So let me repeat those words that Giovanni read in our welcome. The words of Archbishop Tutu to us. People can tell you here in Philadelphia that your problems, seemingly intractable, can be solved. And why? They can be solved ultimately because this is a moral universe. This is God's world and God is in charge. Sometimes you wish you could say to God, we know that you are in charge, but why don't you make it slightly more obvious? But goodness will ultimately prevail because God is God and this is a moral universe. We are fundamentally good and we can't give up on anyone. We are made for goodness. In these hard times, we see so many actions of care, however, care, concern, and hope from within our community, actions that speak louder than words and make us neighbors to one another. Whether it is in the collaboration of our refugee and immigrant working group, where so many members of our community from every part of the university and student body take time to both welcome new arrivals to our city and advocate for policy changes that make us a more hospitable and just nation. Or whether it's our student immersion trips who ventured just this month to El Paso, Florida, and Las Cruces in Texas to learn more and to come to know the immigration reality at our border and in arrival communities. Or whether it's our academic work in so many classes that explores and shares new knowledge on a complex and diverse world and opens up new ways of human understanding for the understanding of humans in the world around us. The entire interdependent web of life and created matter. We explore that all the time, all year. It's also to the many ways that we have simply cared for each other and doing the hard thing and keeping each other out of harm's way by our just practicing simple COVID mitigations. These are small things that add up to a community that has done well to manage through and increase a quality of life for each other. All of these are the sorts of doables that Archbishop Tutu mentioned to us over a decade ago. May his spirit of global friendship and his advice on how to be neighbors continue to inspire us as we welcome the neighbor in all ways and celebrate the power of God's closeness, compassion, and goodness in this Ignatian year. And now we will have a special sharing from our university singers, who will offer a rendition of Tree of Peace, which is a work based upon a Quaker poem. And then after that, we will have sharings from the Christian and Baha'i traditions.
I ask God to rouse us from our disregard from those who are suffering, to shake us from an individualism that excludes others, to awaken hearts that are deaf to the needs of our neighbors. I ask every person, all of us, to overcome the paralysis of fear, the indifference that kills, the cynical disregard that nonchalantly condemns to death those on the fringes. Let us combat at its roots the dominant mindset that revolves around ourselves, our self-interests, personal and national, and becomes the measure and criterion of everything. God loves us as children. God wants us to be brothers and sisters. Instead, God is offended when we despise the men and women created in his image, leaving them at the mercy of the waves, in the wash of indifference, justified at times, even in the time of supposedly Christian values. On the contrary, faith demands compassion and mercy. Let us not forget that this is God's style: closeness, compassion, and tenderness. Jesus solemnly tells us that he is present in the stranger, in the refugee, in those who are naked and hungry. May Mary, the mother of Jesus, help us to have a maternal gaze that regards all human beings as children of God, sisters and brothers to be welcome, protected, supported, and integrated, and to be loved tenderly. May the All-Holy Mother teach us to put the reality of men and women before ideas and ideologies, and to go forth in haste to encounter all those who suffer.
O Son of Love, thou art but one step away from the glorious heights above and from the celestial tree of love. Take thou one pace, and with the next advance into the immortal realm and enter the pavilion of eternity. Give ear then to that which hath been revealed by the pen of glory. Know thou that all men have been created in the nature made by God, the guardian, the self-subsisting. All that which ye potentially possess can, however, be manifested only as a result of your own volition. Your own acts testify to this truth. Acknowledgement of the excellence of honor does not make a man honorable. Knowledge of human conditions and the needed remedy for them is not the cause of their betterment. To admit that health is good does not constitute health. The attainment of any object is conditioned upon knowledge, volition, and action. Unless these three conditions are forthcoming, there is no execution or accomplishment. Whether peace is to be reached only after unimaginable horrors precipitated by humanity's stubborn clinging to old patterns of behavior, or is to be embraced now by an active consultative will, is the choice before all who inhabit the earth. At this critical juncture, when the intractable problems confronting nations have been fused into one common concern for the whole world, Failure to stem the tide of conflict and disorder would be unconscionably irresponsible.
Thank you, Maggie and Dr. Kurtz. Now, in the spirit of neighborly solidarity, let us offer each other a sign of peace and blessings with a bow or gesture of welcome. Join in singing our closing song, Hold On to Love. We Are Many Parts by Marty Haugen.
I want to thank everybody for being here, especially our university singers and our choir, chapel choir, for leading us in song and offering that beautiful expression, but also for all of the students and faculty and staff who have shared from their tradition. I encourage you to take the program home and pay attention or use those pieces of wisdom, those reflections and prayers for your own use in your own way. and let that be a continued blessing for you on this new year. As we go forth, please feel free to grab a refreshment. We don't have a full-fledged refreshment in these strange times, but we can have a little grab and go, and maybe you can even chat outside or chat inside, whatever works for you. And also know, too, that this particular program is very organic. People come and contribute from each of their traditions. It comes together in a really beautiful way, to be honest, everybody contributing something, and it all just blends together. And this year, I think in particular, having not done it last year, we had to figure out how to make it work in these unusual times. So I just want to thank everybody from the Interfaith Task Force who has come together to make their contributions, the many students, faculty, and staff who have been a part of that in whatever way. And also, too, as we go forward, there's on the back sheet there, a back table right before you leave. There's also an opportunity if you wanted to do a 5-week version of the spiritual exercises. We have had many people from within our own community, from all religious traditions and no religious tradition at all over the last 50 years, enter into that experience. And if you're interested in it, please just put your name and email down there, and someone from the Office of Mission will be in touch with you. It's a 5-week reflection in everyday life, meeting once a week with a guide. And again, we have a message also in our program from our campus ministry department and the many ways in which they reach out to all students of all faiths and students of no particular tradition of all, and the ways in which, too, through campus ministry, you can explore your spirituality and your faith and religious tradition through the aid of the many things that our students and staff do there. So again, thank you, and appreciate you gathering on this beautiful sunny winter day. God bless.